It's the show you know and love, ONS, with me, your host, the God King of Dark Souls. I think we're at a point now where I am inarguably the best player to ever play this game. I say that with no sarcasm whatsoever. I'm absolutely 150% serious. I am most definitely am not saying that to get a rise out of you whatsoever. Anywho, big news on the horizon, as you are well aware by now, hopefully. Dark Souls 2 was announced at the VGAs, and the Dark Souls community is abuzz. I, for a while now, was wondering if we were going to get another DLC announcement or another game announcement, but I'll discuss Dark Souls 2 in just a bit. I want to explain the video you were seeing before you. It's soul level 90 or so, obviously in the new Artorias of the Abyss content. I'm using a Divine Halberd plus 10, flipping around and blowing dudes up with Wrath of the Gods. That's going to make a lot of you very upset, and so be it. I am far past the point of caring about that. All this footage was recorded last night in a very long session of gaming. All in all, it went well. It's an interesting build I've got. High emphasis on faith. I think it's just around 40 or so. Very light armor, as you can see. It's the Holy Robes along with the Katarina leggings, Elite Knight gauntlets, and Mask of the Father. It's got an interesting aesthetic, as you can see. I like the maneuverability of it. I'm also bringing along the target shield. Hopefully in another video we'll actually get to see some parries. I wasn't having a whole lot of opportunities this time around to get any. All in all, it's a strong PvP build. I think faith builds always allow for a lot of different directions to go in. I think this build here is still developing. I might upgrade another weapon, the normal route, and have it be buffable with Dark Moon Blade. As of course, the Divine Halberd is not buffable. If you have any suggestions as to what weapon I should upgrade, feel free to suggest them in the comments below, along with any other quotables from past videos you'd like to throw in as well. Might I suggest Fun or Night Shield OP? Not a tired joke whatsoever at this point. But it's been a while since my last true ONS PvP video. I haven't had really a chance to discuss the DLC at all, but I'm not sure there's a whole lot to be said at this point. You've played it, I've played it, you probably enjoyed it, I certainly enjoyed it. I'm in the process of capturing more footage for Oolacile Township PvP, so expect that coming after this at some point, hopefully a bit sooner than my last video. We'll see. December's a busy month, of course, for all of us, but let's hop into the meat of this video. Dark Souls 2. A big surprise announcement at the VGAs. I'm not sure many were expecting it to be revealed there, but I think it's a good move by Namco and From Software. Dark Souls was a game that sold a lot better than expected, at least in my standards and probably for Namco and From Software standards. Almost 2 million total sales on what many would consider to be a niche game. I think, given that Dark Souls 2 is going to have a new director, I would not be surprised if Dark Souls 2 is a bit more accessible than Dark Souls is. I don't think this is a bad thing, as in many ways, Dark Souls is a more accessible game than Demon Souls is. I think many would agree that Demon Souls is an all-around more difficult game than Dark Souls is. As far as refinements go, I'm sure we all have our own thoughts as to how the game can be improved upon. As for me, I just hope that From Software is not afraid to make radical departures from the current formula. In terms of what that means, I just hope to be surprised by what From Software brings to the table. Dark Souls was a lot of the same compared to Demon Souls. It reuses a lot of similar elements. I hope we don't have things like Ceaseless Discharge and Bed of Chaos in Dark Souls 2. Bosses where on paper and concept art seem like a good idea, end up not being fully executed to their fullest. I like that they're making a bigger focus on multiplayer, which is still an issue in Dark Souls, and part of the reason there are such long delays between my videos. Sometimes I can play for hours and only get a few invasions, and of those, I'll run into lag stabs or other connection issues. I think they're going in the right direction, given the arena mechanics they introduced with the new DLC. Some form of leaderboards would be nice, even more detailed than the ones that they currently have. More accessible stat tracking, and it pains me to say this, but Call of Duty actually does do a good job of informing you how you perform within matches. I think something like that for Dark Souls 2, where you'd have charts listing how many successful invasions you've had, would be great, just to help you grow as a player in multiplayer. I think it's areas like that where other games excel, while Dark Souls has still a lot to catch up. In terms of story, from what's been revealed so far, which is very little, I like that it's being set in a new world with a new protagonist. I feel like that's how the Souls series should be. As much as I like Lordran and the mythos of it, there's something new and refreshing about being somewhere else and getting to explore the mystery of that world. And if the trailer that was shown to us is any indication, it seems like a large departure from Lordran in terms of design. In particular, I happen to love the look of the enemies wearing the round white masks. That's another element where I think Dark Souls excels, and I would love to see more of that in the next game. Just a wide variety of different armor and different designs. I think having armor being more normalized in terms of stats could be important in terms of PvP. The way it is now, you can look at someone and immediately sort of figure out what they're going to throw at you, both offensively and defensively. It would be better if it was more of a mystery, that your armor and weapons were less of a tell, and in order to do that, you would just need to have more extensive customization within Dark Souls 2. The idea that you could take any item in the game and upgrade it to a point of being a viable weapon in PvP is an exciting prospect to me. A large majority of the weapons in the game aren't worth using if you're to have a fighting chance within PvP. That's not to say you can't use particular weapons, but it will put you at a disadvantage to stronger, more popular ones. Given from what I've gleaned from places like 4chan's VG, there's lots of talk of more randomization within the game. Having it so enemies wander around in locations, so areas are less easily memorized and therefore more difficult, which allows for more replay value. There's also been a lot of talk as to whether to include covenants once again, and I have a feeling that we'll see a very modified version of covenants within the next game. It's certainly an interesting mechanic and one that would be weird to do without at this point, but I think there's still a lot that could be expanded upon, especially given that a lot of covenants within Dark Souls are not as heavily used as others. Again, I think a normalization would be nice within the game, where restrictions on things such as invasions wouldn't be placed dependent on which covenant you were a part of. I feel as well that a mechanic like messages could be greatly improved upon, as I found myself never really using them in the game in Dark Souls, at least not to the extent that I was using them in Demon Souls. And I think I may have mentioned this in a prior video as well, but having invasions be more discreet could make the game more exciting in the long run. If you look at a game like Assassin's Creed 3 or Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and its multiplayer, I think there's a lot that could be borrowed from it in terms of not knowing who your enemy is until they kill you. How awesome would it be if you were to visit a bustling town in Dark Souls 2, much like an Oolacile back in the time where it was still a vibrant community, filled with other non-hostile undead wearing various armor that you can acquire within the game, except for one or two multiplayer phantoms among the midst of the undead. Again, it's ideas like this that I hope From Software allows themselves to have, to really think outside the box and not feel bound to deliver a game that is as familiar as what we know and expect of them. I know I've discussed a lot by this point, and cheers to you if you've stuck through until now. Feel free in the comments below to speak your mind about what you think Dark Souls 2 should include or perhaps not include. Or criticize the hell out of my playing style like I know you will, that is fine too. I'm just going to take the remaining time to discuss a few other things shown in the VGAs. I really like what the VGAs are becoming. I think it's become almost a legitimized part of the gaming calendar year now that it's in its 10th year, especially with them awarding Game of the Year to a lesser known title, sort of an indie title and an episodic game with The Walking Dead. Game companies are certainly using the VGAs as a way to market their tentpole releases now. I think the game that a lot of people were discussing was The Phantom Pain, which, as of this video, appears to be a Metal Gear Solid 5 teaser. I'm sure if you're watching this video a few months from now, things will be a bit more clear as to what we were seeing. I'm actually a huge Metal Gear Solid fan, and it seems pretty clear to me, given the hints that were sprinkled into the trailer, that the Phantom Pain is related to Metal Gear in some way. I think 2013 is certainly shaping up to be another big year in gaming, especially in the early part of the year. It's good to see that The Last of Us finally has a release date, and a bit sad to see that BioShock Infinite has been delayed once again, and it may be a bit optimistic to say now, but there is always a chance that Dark Souls 2 will be out by October or November of 2013, given that Dark Souls would have been 2 years ago by that point. That seems to be the development cycle for the Souls series. Let me know what you're looking forward to aside from Dark Souls 2. There's certainly a lot of games on the horizon. Anyways, should have another video out coming up soon. I know I've got footage recorded for it in Oolacile Township, PvP kind of stuff. So, as always, Ornstein out.